Hello.
Hello?
I'm paranoid that you're listening to me filming.
I can't hear a thing.
Do you promise?
Promise.
Every time I hear a noise, I think it's you, like, hiding outside the door, like a little sneak.
Oh, you're mental.
A little bit, yeah.
No, empty.
Okay. I love you.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thought I'd just take a break from vlogging today and instead make a video about the illnesses I have and sort of how they affect me every day. I just figure that it doesn't really make much sense me vlogging all the time and talking about various illnesses and various symptoms that I get, and no one really knows what's wrong with me. I think for each illness I do suffer with, I'm going to make a separate video, do a series and go a little more in depth into each one so you can find out how I was diagnosed and a little more like that. I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning with a really unhappy tummy and just generally not feeling very happy, I'm having another depressive episode come on, I think, so for most of today I've just been lying around in bed. I've had a lot of mood swings, but it's now nearly 5 o'clock and I just thought, get the hell out of bed, put a bit of makeup on so you feel a bit nicer, and then if you're up to it, see if you can film a video. And I'm really proud of myself. Although I might not get around to editing this video today, I got out of bed, I put on some makeup and I'm sat here filming, so it is a success in my eyes. There isn't really any structure to the order in which I'm going to talk about my illnesses here. Well, there is, that's a lie. I'm going to talk about each one. I don't know how to explain. One of my issues with my illnesses is I find it really hard my brain gets very foggy and I can't think of the words that I'm trying to say or the order to put them in to explain. So let me have a think. A lot of my illnesses went undiagnosed for a lot of my life, so I figure rather than go through them in chronological order of my diagnosis, I thought I'd go through them in chronological order of how long I would have suffered from them. So the first one that is on my list is the one that I talk about the most often, borderline personality disorder, or BPD for short. I was diagnosed with BPD last year after a referral from my GP because I thought I had bipolar. Turns out I didn't, and instead I have borderline. I would have had borderline personality disorder from when I was very, very young, very early childhood. It sort of comes about as a result of childhood trauma or childhood trauma over a long period of time. And essentially the main issue that you get in people with borderline is they have very little control over their emotions. Our moods are very up and down during the day, so for example, yesterday morning I woke up feeling really sad and really depressed and really not in a good place. A couple of hours later I was elated for no reason at all, I was sad for no reason at all, and then I got angry a couple of hours after that, and basically the mood swings just, they flip back and forth for often no reason at all. We're very emotionally raw, so we feel things a lot more intensely than people without the illness. In particular, I'm the impulsive type of borderline, so when I get into the extreme mood swings, I can do dangerous things like self-harm, or one time I bought a one-way ticket to Australia. I decided I'd go and live in Australia. I've moved about 30 times now. Just very impulsive things without very little thought. I can make very snap decisions. We also find it very hard to maintain relationships, and I think a lot of that is because we can misunderstand a lot of the time other people's intentions towards us, and we overanalyze every single thing, from small gestures to facial expressions to even just tones of voice. We overanalyze anything. So my boyfriend could tell me that he thinks I'm absolutely beautiful, but to me, if I hear it in a way that I perceive to be a little bit off, then I'll push him then, because I'll be convincing myself that it's wrong. So there is a lot of paranoia around it. Most of us have an overwhelming fear of rejection and abandonment, and I just like to say quickly that I'm not coming at this from the point of view of a medical professional. I'm talking about this from my experience, so what I experience might not be what someone else with the same disorder experiences, but personally I think my borderline was triggered by a lot of disruption in early childhood. Do you know what? I was about to go off on a bit of a tangent about my whole childhood, and I just remembered that that's exactly why I want to make separate videos about each of these things, because otherwise this video is going to be hours long and I don't want to put you through that. So, next illness that I suffer with is dyspraxia, and I know a lot of people haven't really heard of this before. It's not really something that's spoken about that much that I see, but I would have had this from birth, but it was only diagnosed, oh god, when was it diagnosed? When I was 19, so 4 years ago. The reason why it wasn't diagnosed for so long, again, I'll go into it in another video. For people who suffer with dyspraxia, there's a part of the brain that doesn't develop properly, and it results in having very poor spatial awareness. So what it can mean is you can forget how to get places a lot of the time, so you get lost a lot of the time. For me personally, I walk into things all the time, so I walk into walls, I trip over things, I hurt myself. Let's say I went to pick up this camera in front of me right now. Sometimes I could put my hand there to pick it up, because that's where my brain thinks I need to put my hand to pick it up. And so obviously with things like making a cup of tea, I've had it before where I've been holding my mug and I've poured the kettle and poured boiling water straight over my hand, and because of that I'm covered in scars, I'm covered in bruises, and I know a lot of people with the same illness, they're exactly the same. It does frustrate me a lot because it means that I don't feel safe doing things like driving. I can't ride a bike. The times I remember, the last time I rode a bike, I rode it and went off the pavement and fell off my bike onto the main road. So I haven't ridden a bike since. I very rarely cook, or if I do cook, I don't use the oven, because if I go to take something out of the oven, usually I'll touch the oven with every single part of my body, and I've got scars in places that you would think, how the hell did you manage to burn yourself there? I know it's also got a lot of other ways that it impacts you, such as having issues with money is a big one for me. I can't budget, and I'm very impulsive and just blow my money on a lot of things, but that could also be related to a lot of my other conditions. But for the most part, that's the biggest way dyspraxia affects me personally. My next one is my most recent diagnosis, and it's a bit of an odd one, and it's quite uncertain as to how long I would have suffered with this illness, and that is pernicious anemia. Pernicious anemia is an autoimmune disease. My body likes to waste its time. It's a bit of a procrastinator, and for some reason it likes to create these little warrior antibodies that live in my stomach, and what they do is they kill off a protein in my stomach, and that protein is the protein that binds to vitamin B12 for you to be able to absorb it. So I can't absorb any B12 at all through my diet. I'm not sure of the other functions of B12, but the main one that I remember is that it creates healthy red blood cells, and it also coats your nerves. Red blood cells are made in the bone marrow, and what happens is, because there's not enough B12, I don't know the reason why it does this, but it just makes the red blood cells bigger than they should be, which means that it's very hard for them to pass through the bone marrow and into the blood. So that's where the anemia comes into it. It means that you are less efficient in transporting oxygen around your body. So if you notice in a lot of my videos, I am very out of breath when I'm not really doing anything. That's most likely the reason why. Also because I got a little bit of extra meat on me, which I'm working on, but mostly it's because of that. Unfortunately, because it was undiagnosed for so long, another use for B12 is, like I said, coating the nerves. So I didn't have as much coating on my nerves in my body, so they were prone to being damaged. Because it's such a new diagnosis for me, we're still trying to work out whether I have dyspraxia or whether I just have long-term damage from not having enough B12 for so long. It also causes cognitive problems, so if you'll notice a lot of the time in my videos, I've even done it in this video, I forget what I'm talking about, or I can't find the words for what I'm thinking of, or just things where I might seem a bit simple some of the time. It's just because my brain has had a bit of a battering, and I can get a bit of, we call it brain fog, so my mind can just go a bit blank, and I have very, very poor memory. I couldn't tell you what I did this morning. That's why I have loads of journals, I tend to write everything down. Again, I'll go more in depth in a video about that because there's so much more I want to say about that as well, because it is such a rare condition and I haven't really seen much on the internet about it other than the Pernicious Anaemia website, so I will talk more about that in another video. So that leads me to my next two illnesses, which were brought on at the same time. So I suffer with depression and anxiety, which obviously I talk a lot about in my videos. I talk about my videos as if I have hundreds of them. I think I have 3. I never had any issues with depression or anxiety until I was 16, and they were brought on by a traumatic event, which I won't discuss in this video. But since I've suffered with those, they've gradually gotten worse over the years. Just having depression on its own is hard enough, because some days it's so hard to have the motivation to do anything, and personally for me, I don't even feel sad. like the media portrays that if you're depressed it just means you're sad all the time and you cry all the time. I don't. I very rarely cry. In fact, I think I've used up my quota for crying this year already, so I'm all dried up for the rest of the year now. What depression means for me is usually if I get stressed or something bad happens in my life, I don't have any coping mechanisms, so I feel like in my body I feel like a jellyfish. I know that sounds weird. It feels like I have no bones to support me and I'm just nothing, and everything feels like so much effort. It's a lot like if you've ever had flu and you just feel like you can't do anything. Someone could tell you that there's 20 quid on your doorstep and you wouldn't want to get out of bed to go and get it. You just lie there and you've got no interest in anything. You don't want to read, you don't want to watch TV, you don't want to do anything, you don't even think a lot of the time, it's just nothing. And it's a really difficult time when you're struggling with depression, and obviously day to day there are varying levels, so one day you could be completely stuck in your bed and one day you could be functioning a little bit but still really struggling in your head. But personally for me it can get so bad on days where I don't eat, I don't drink, I don't take my medication, I can go for a week without showering. I've even had it before where I've had to pee in a cup by my bed because I wouldn't even walk like to my bathroom to even go for a wee. I just didn't care. Didn't care about anything. It's a really, really difficult illness, and I know a lot of people are embarrassed by it and they feel like it makes them lazy, but it's not the case. It's not a personality trait, it's an illness. And I think a lot of people need to change their mindset when it comes to depression. So personally for me, when I'm having a depressive episode, I just ride it, and I'm not too hard on myself personally, and then when I come out of it, great, but I've never found that pushing myself has made it any better, basically. So depression is hard on its own, but when you suffer with anxiety as well, it's a mind fuck. That's all I can say. On the days I'm depressed, I do nothing. On the on the days where I'm anxious, I can't stop doing things, so I have to do everything in my house, clean it from top to bottom, organise all of the drawers, wash the dog, wash myself, you know, get all the paperwork sorted, just everything I can. I can't stop doing anything in my house, because if I stop doing something then my anxiety takes over and I'll have panic attacks. I very rarely leave the house because as soon as I step outside I have panic attacks. Even just the thought of going outside a lot of the time gives me panic attacks. Most of my anxiety is brought on by people, social anxiety, so a lot of the time I can't speak to anyone. Even just having my Twitter is a huge step for me, and this YouTube channel, honestly, if you'd have asked me 6 months ago or told me 6 months ago that I'd have a YouTube channel and I'd be uploading videos that people would be, even just the thought of it, oh my god. It's fine. I'm just talking to my camera, that's all I'm doing right now. There are nights that I'm so anxious that I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm having a panic attack, for no reason. I have panic attacks all the time for no reason. All of my illnesses are kind of linked to one another, so my BPD can trigger my depression and my anxiety. My paranoia in particular can trigger my anxiety. My pernicious anemia and my depression, I can have flare-ups of those on the same day. It's just like a really big, not fun game. It's Trivial Pursuit. I never know what I'm going to get on the day. Depression and anxiety at the same time is particularly hard. For me, I could be lying in bed and I can't do anything, but in my head my anxiety is saying, well, you need to do this, that and the other, and if you don't do this, that and the other, the whole world's going to end, and it's just like, oh, shut the fuck up. If you have any questions, just leave them down below and I will answer you as soon as I can, or if you have any requests for a video, then just let me know. I'm here to help you, so if you ever need someone to talk to, I always say just send me a message on Twitter, and I'll try and help you as much as I can. But I'm going to leave it there for now and let you go and have your dinner or something, or you're probably bursting for a wee, so go and wee. If you've made it this far, then well done. Enjoy your evening. Thank you for watching. Bye!